I am COVID cautious.
I'm still COVIDing.
I'm still COVIDing.
I'm COVID cautious.
I'm still COVIDing.
I am COVID cautious.
I am COVID cautious.
I'm still COVIDing.
I'm still COVIDing.
I will be COVIDing until we get a sterilizing vaccine.
I'm still COVIDing because I think my life depends on it, honestly.
I'm a healthy person, but I am still COVIDing because this pandemic is not over. And also, we do not know how this virus will affect us.
I'm COVID cautious because I'm protecting my wife. She's got some serious lung issues that from the very beginning of the pandemic, we needed to take it seriously. And we continue to take it seriously almost 4 years later.
I'm disabled. I have cerebral palsy. I'm a wheelchair user.
I had gotten mono, and it reactivated when I was 37 years of age, and it caused ME/CFS.
I have Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid, inflammatory thyroid disease.
I was told that if I got COVID, I could lose my transplant.
I have lupus and type 2 diabetes.
Celiac disease and diabetes. And I actually have 4 other conditions that also come with that. So my risks are so high for every single environment that I could possibly go into.
I have a neuroimmune condition, myalgic encephalomyelitis. It's very similar to long COVID, actually, except mine wasn't triggered by COVID.
We all have our levels of risk, and so that is the primary reason, maybe, well, I'll speak for myself, why I'm doing it. I'm trying to stay alive. But at the same time, it's also the right thing to do.
Because I have risk factors, and the idea of long COVID terrifies me.
I have a rare lung disease on top of my asthma and bronchiectasis.
I was working on doing contact tracing in the very beginning, calling people who had COVID, and I saw what it did to them.
I'm just trying to stay alive.
So the other reason that I mask is to protect people that have already suffered enough and certainly need to not get it again. And there's a bunch of people that, for whatever reason, are also immunocompromised.
Because I spent the last 16 years of my life getting derailed by mild viruses. And I'm still COVIDing so that this doesn't happen again. And I'll keep COVIDing until there are better treatments for long COVID.
So I have long COVID, and since I came down with long COVID, my symptoms have varied. So the biggest symptom that I have is post-exertion malaise, where there's days where I cannot physically get out of bed, even after being in bed for 12 hours. It doesn't matter how long I'm sleeping for. I have intense migraines with aura. I have severe vision issues, and I've had brain fog. I've had some memory issues. I've had hair breakage and hair loss. I have had severe GI issues. That thankfully has improved, but my GI issues were so severe that for 9 months I couldn't digest, and my GI doctor wanted to put me on a feeding tube.
I've had COVID since November 2021, including 3 acute bouts, and I've had ongoing symptoms of asthma, which was never seen before, asthma, congestion, heart issues, pulmonary issues, muscular issues, chronic fatigue, brain fog, and the list goes on.
My eyes were greatly affected. I really do think that the reason that I'm alive is because I wore my N95.
I believe that I'm actually still alive because I was vaccinated and boosted.
I protect myself by wearing a mask indoors, being fully vaccinated.
Well, I mask inside and outside.
I mask everywhere.
Masking continually.
Still mask in public settings.
I wear the mask everywhere I go, even now.
I'll still wear a mask. I'll wear a mask forever because I'm high risk.
Work remote from home. I Instacart my groceries.
Isolated from my friends and my family.
I've got my air quality monitor, and I take that with me. And if it gets too high, we will leave any place we've gone.
I researched what Davos safe meant and what Davos standards meant. And this was maybe about 14 months ago. So what that means when you see that hashtag on social media, so the elites who come, which is world leaders, including our president, they come from all over the world to meet at the World Economic Forum, which is in Davos, Switzerland. They have COVID safe mitigations that the rest of the world does not have. And that includes access to all types of rapid PCR tests that would immediately, if somebody had COVID, it would deactivate their badges. They had HEPA filters, they had filtration, but they also have something called far UV light or far UVC light. And I researched that. So far UVC light, 222 nanometers, safely kills all bacteria and all viruses, including COVID in the air.
Going to work is actually my biggest risk and also the only place that I go other than the grocery store, because that's required, and the doctor's appointments. Otherwise, I am very much staying alone.
Until recently, I was really pretty isolated. Like, I stayed home.
So when it comes to COVID and long COVID, I think a lot of emphasis has been put on the physical side of all of this, but not so much on the mental, emotional, psychological side of the suffering that happens when a person is dealing with long COVID. We have life-changing things that happen, like not being able to work, not having enough money, not having good health care, not having social opportunities, not being able to even be perceived in the same way as we were before. I think that is a big part of what goes into the suffering that long COVID patients have to deal with.
The last few years have really affected me socially. It's been hard to not be able to go to dinner with friends or go to parties, just missing out on a lot of stuff and missing Christmas. It's been difficult.
I'm certainly missing out on a social life. Here I am in my late 20s, and I've been living at home for 3 years in isolation. It's definitely not how I thought I'd be spending the last years of my 20s, but I just remind myself that I'm doing this because if I don't do it, I can end up with severe ME and spend the rest of my life in my bed.
I've been bedbound for 14 months and locked out of society is how I would describe it. I would bring N95 masks to my doctors and to my dentists, and everyone from the receptionist to the office manager to some doctors themselves and some dentists themselves would sneer.
Going over to my mom's place for dinner isn't happening, mostly because my sister is not. My sister and her family, they're not wearing masks, and I have a niece that goes to school and she's not wearing a mask. So I've kind of had to stay away from them.
I went from seeing my daughter all the time to basically not seeing her other than in video.
Prior to having COVID, I was much healthier than I am now. I was able to exercise more. I didn't have the breathing problems that I do now. And I was able to live a functional life with a lot of social and recreational activities. I was able to work full time, and I can't do most of those things now. You know, I even get out of breath just talking.
I've lost a lot of people that used to be in that middle category of, happy friends and happy to talk to and kept me company, and I kept them company, but it's not worth it to them to wear a mask around me.
Closest connections that I have, they don't want to see me at all. So that's hard.
I try to look for reasons for hope and love in a world that too often looks otherwise. But having said that, I'd be lying if I didn't admit that it's also really frustrating and sort of sad, right? Like, we're all dealing with these losses. And the longer we go, the more these losses are compounded because we're living differently.
We don't have any friends near us or any of our close friends that are still masking.
Like, my personality has definitely changed with COVID. Like, I'm just not the same outgoing person that I was pre-COVID.
It's just frustrating. You feel like you don't exist.
Being forgotten is the perfect way to put it, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I sit here hoping to make it through another day in a world that knows people who have died. Like, I know people who know people who have died. I know people who have died.
I had to essentially leave my job because I couldn't sustain a full-time position. And so and that was really very troubling for me. Of course, and my family financially, because that's like half of our income gone.
I'll just use my niece as an example. When COVID first started, she was screaming at me of like, "You're still going shopping? You're crazy. You got to get your food ordered and, blah, blah, blah. And you got to be so careful." I mean, she was more riled up about it than I was at first, because I was kind of like, oh, I'm going to kind of wait and see what's going on with this. And within 3 months, she went from that position to, I will no longer allow the boys to wear a mask around you.
You to have your life, but would you be willing to wear a mask everywhere you go for like the week or two before that? No, they're not willing to do that. Most of my family, most of my friends.
Really, all those relationships are gone, and I don't have any friends outside of like the virtual world.
Because the fatigue is so bad that the level of energy that you need to get up just to go to the toilet or just to brush your teeth is so exhausting that oftentimes that you will just have to go and get back in bed. So the biggest thing with long COVID is, if you know you have to do something, you have to rest before you do anything.
I miss my friends so much. I miss going to theater.
It's the level of loneliness and isolation. And while I'm grateful for Zoom and the still COVIDing groups, it's two-dimensional. But I just want to sit and have a cup of tea with a friend and get a hug, hello, and goodbye. And I don't have that. So I'm at this point in my life where at 72, it's hard to make new friends to begin with. There's a pandemic and nobody I know wears a mask. So it's like, so it's really that sense of being so alone at this stage of life.
People suffer in silence in many cases. They feel isolated, they feel ostracized. Just like I said earlier about the wearing a mask, when you're the only one wearing the mask and people are turning it, I think whether they're saying it or you can see it in their eyes, how they turn it on you, like there's something wrong with him and he needs to get over this, whatever it is.
I know people that got COVID before we even knew what it was, and they're still dealing with long COVID.
But she got COVID after having her family test and after them all being negative, but unmasked at a Christmas gathering. And she has long COVID as a result. To this day, she has trouble walking and breathing.
Another loved one of mine just passed away in skilled nursing after repeat COVID infections.
And is now bedridden, which we now know is long COVID. And this is at 16.
Another person has damage in their hands and they're an artist, and another person couldn't walk anymore because they had damage in their leg.
My sister had contracted COVID in December 2020 and passed away in January of 2021.
And I have a lot of friends that have lupus or MS or something has come since they've had an infection with COVID.
COVID is more dangerous than the flu. There is a much higher mortality rate with COVID, and it attacks many more body systems than the flu does.
One of the winters that was extremely bad, I was taking all precautions. I had my N95 on, I had a face shield on, and someone made a comment saying, "Oh, are you going to a welding class?"
And I had my mask on and I was walking outside and some guy started singing a song that he had made up about that masks would do more damage than the air that I could breathe outside.
Someone said to me that people should just be sacrificed.
Because the world is moving on, like it's really, we're the ones who are looked at as the problem.
So I went to Target Optical to get glasses. And this was December of 2022. And I was the lone masker in the store wearing my 3M Aura mask. And that's probably why I'm alive. And what we didn't know at that time was that COVID can affect your eyes. So even with my 3M Aura tightly fit tested, I found out after the fact that the person fitting my frames actually had COVID. I don't really blame necessarily the employee, because my experience there was when I actually went into the Target optical store, one of the managers there, he bullied me for wearing a mask too. And I had to ask for another person to help me, which is the person that helped me. And the person that helped me, I had seen before, and she actually used to wear a mask. And because her supervisor, was somebody who was bullying people about masks, including bullying customers like myself, she stopped wearing her mask. So I got her on a day where she was not wearing a mask. And sure enough, pretty much after she stopped masking, she contracted COVID.
I'm the only male that I know of that has long COVID. I mean, in my world, and so I find, and I know that the statistics say that women are more likely to have long COVID than men. And when I read that, and I read that information and what the profile is, like, the age range and, the gender and whatever else, I don't fit most of those categories. And that's what's so frustrating. Not that I listen, I don't want anybody to have long COVID. I mean, there's no question. No one deserves this. But I still don't understand. Like, I mean, other than the fact that I had high blood pressure, which was being managed and addressed. I never had asthma. I never had pulmonary problems. I never had muscle and joint pain. I never had these other things. And so I feel also, because I wear the mask everywhere I go, even now, that I think and I'm just saying this because it's how I feel, that when I go to public places, I think that people look at me, and not only do they think that I'm sick and why is he out if he's sick, but if they know me or whatever, and I'm not saying all my friends think this, but I think some of them actually may quietly think, well, he should just man up.
She said, why are you so worried about COVID? And I said, well, I have 250 artists that rely on me, and I'm worried about my job and being able to do it. And, because of my other health conditions and stuff like that. And she sort of understood once I said it was my job. But if it had just been about my health, she would have kind of brushed it off a little bit, which is kind of sad and scary.
I also wish there were more tolerance towards people who are continuing to be COVIDing.
I'll show up in an N95, and I have glasses too that I wear. And people walk in and they're not even wearing a surgical mask, and they get right up to my face, and I just have to say, no, don't do that. I'm wearing a mask for a reason. I'm vulnerable. It should just be a rule that you see someone in a mask, you put a mask on.
Yeah.
That should just be a common courtesy. And even in healthcare, it's not a thing. And I feel like I have to protect myself against doctors and nurses and everyone. You're not even safe in the one place you should be the most safe.
I feel that they don't understand what I'm going through.
It's getting very difficult, but I keep going. I keep going because this is what needs to be done.
Everyone forgets that we're all just one virus or one accident away from becoming disabled or vulnerable.
It's Chris, so it's not me, they'll think. But at the end of the day, we're all at risk. And there's many people getting long COVID. There's many people who were healthy who are not healthy anymore. There's studies that show all kinds of complications. And all that being said, though, again, going back to my primary point, it's the right thing to do. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else getting sick or dying.
And it says here, if you can see this, it says choose empathy. And on the back, it says it shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you.